Hello, welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you a resourceful endgame trick that I watched on a game of one of my students. We're gonna look a little bit into the game, like just a few moves, and then we're gonna focus in the endgame, which was dead lost, but because of a thing that my student knew, well, he still knows it, so a thing that my student knows. Uh, he managed to save a completely losing position. Okay, Sicilian, the Alapin, Bishop g4 is a move you play in a rapid game. It's fine. He then get a great position, actually a bit worse, but a little bit of lack of preparation there. Actually, the only thing after Bishop b5, I think it's Rook c8, d5, a6, Bishop a4, and b5, something along those lines. The rook c8, d5, and I think a6 is the only move. No, yeah, and if this b5. This is the only line that kind of saves. But well, his opponent missed that he could just do that. Bishop a4 and just get an active pawn on c6 and then the a4 pawn. So a lot better than what he did with bishop takes pawn takes on queen b6, which gets back the pawn. Here he played queen takes instead of queen takes c6, rook takes c6, which it's quite natural, like just to prefer to pin with a lower valued piece, but I think it's mistake because with queen takes you pressure more squares. You don't allow bishop e3 attacking your queen. So yeah, queen takes c6 makes more sense. Because rook takes c6 for me it just looks awkward, just a bit strange. The coordination in of the pieces is really low. They're kind of just running to each other too close together. I don't know. It just looks strange. But rook c6, queen c7, another logical move. If you play rook takes c6, then the idea is to double up. I think this +1 is kind of crazy. I think should be way lower. But well, it's fine because there is queen a4, knight d5 is coming, e6, rook c1 would have been a nice idea to try and attack, but he castled first, allowing castles here, and then a beautiful tactical idea with knight d5, which is absolutely crazy, but of course he missed it. And now it's again not back to equality, white is still better, but now it's a completely playable position for black. Now rook c8, which is not logical, 5 seconds dedicating to that move. My student has a problem with time travel. We have been working on it. For classical games, it has improved a lot, but for online games, he's still a bit too quick on rapid games. But for classical, with the thing I do, that usually a plan specific in trying to avoid moving too quickly, I think we have resolved that problem. But okay, now it's just a really drawish endgame, but he played it like really badly. Again, I d3, all of this makes sense, but then he just generates a huge weakness. The d6 pawn is going to be a really huge weakness. The bishop is being touched, a lot of things hanging. This should be equal. He has to or activate the king or win a tempo because I think the knight can do a lot of things in this position. Probably is a bit better than the bishop. But after e5, knight c6, king f8, knight b8, which surprised me, but well, it's fine. a5 would have been my move, but it wasn't. He played knight e1, which is, I don't know. Yeah, for me, it just doesn't make any sense. You have to try and save the pawn. That's the only way you can save this game. No, Sam. It is losing. It is a king, the bishop endgame. And if you treat bishop, it's a king and pawn losing endgame. So, yeah, it's just losing. But still really tricky. And as you see, only one move wins for white. It's king f1. Not a hard move. But I don't know. King e8, king e2, king d7. And now the only move that wins is bishop d2, then there's d5 trades, and yeah, bishop c5, king d3, king here. And yeah, it's clear that's winning, but that's after a lot of moves. Here, probably neither of them would have known that white was completely winning. So, probably a5 was the best move, but 98, and then the opponent proved the move 98 to be trickier because knight takes a6 will looks way smarter because knight takes f3 is not a problem because it's way better to take the a6 pawn and have two against nothing than being preoccupied by an f3 pawn which does nothing. Not a bad move anyway. F4 is not the move I would have played, but not a terrible one either. It's completely logical, makes sense. Knight f3 now, it's not a move. And now knight c2 again, really bad time usage. Okay, I'm just gonna pass this game because this is not the important part. I just wanted to make the video a bit longer and show you how he got a complete losing endgame. Here, he went resourceful. Here, bishop takes f4 makes sense, h4 makes sense, but then knight takes f5, king e4, and he's gonna lose that pawn too, and it's completely over because it's a really simple endgame. 3 pawns against nothing. It's completely losing. But if you play f4, you might trade pawns there, and if he doesn't want to trade pawns, uh, he might get only the h pawn, and then that was the idea. My student explained it was to get the h pawn, which is the easiest pawn to defend in an endgame always. Like it's better that even if it's completely losing, it's always better that they have an h pawn than a g pawn. With a g pawn, even if it's a king endgame, they are probably winning. But with an h pawn, with a bit of luck and a good king position, it can become a draw if you manage to trade everything and just be a pawn down. So his opponent traded and now played h5, which is really logical. After this would have been a draw, which is really crazy. Like this is a great idea then. f4, you trade everything and just assume you're winning, then you draw this game. Of course, h5 is not a complicated move. Bishop g5, knight e6, and now he went to take the pawns. And now it's a really easy endgame. Like it's two against a bishop. You just have to distract and it's over. But the thing is that uh, black tried some things with king c4 and then white got a bit distracted. b6 is clearly winning. King takes knight, b7, bishop d6, h6. It's completely over because king c6, h7, over. Bishop e5, b8 queen, and bishop takes and h8 queen, and it's queen against bishop, so that's winning. I'm gonna show you. I hope you have followed that. Yeah, this is the line I was talking about. Well, actually, that's king f5, but this is crazy. And now h7, it's over. It's okay. But king c4 got quite scared. Knight c7 is a logical move too, but bishop d6, b6, king c5. b7 is actually winning, and again, it's the same thing. You distract. You just need to distract the opponent. This is actually trickier because after this, it's just the fact that king f5 and bishop e5 can't be played, so then there's no move to defend the promotion of the h pawn and the b pawn. Yeah, you can take it, but then you're still losing because there's no way to defend. So okay, now again he played white played a really bad move like knight a8. It's really ugly, like really ugly. b7 would have sufficed. After when I was looking at this, then I told him, wait, but king f5 ideas you were blocking if bishop e5 and then the h pawn can promote really easy. And he told me that yeah, because he didn't see it in the game, but he understood. But well, of course, it's a difficult idea. They're not bad players at all, but they're 1700 rapid on leeches. So yeah, king c6. Of course, everything here makes sense. Like now, king f5 wins because king b7 is a good threat, but king f5, king b7, you can take the knight, yeah, of course, but you're still lost. h6, bishop e5. And now king b7. And now the important thing. Now it's the most important thing you have to think about in these endgames. Always better to have the bishop on h8. If you have it in a1 in this endgames, like against an h pawn, it's always better to try and make the king take the bishop, because then you might have trapping ideas, as you will see now. Because if they have to take, you know the typical idea, king f7, and then the king is blocked. That's the idea of bishop h8. If you play bishop a1, then they might get a knight on g7, block you, and you have absolutely nothing. So you have to be careful about that. Think about it. My student played bishop h8, knight c7, king b6, knight d5. Never, knight d5 was a good move, actually, I think. But it's just that they have to come and then be able to play knight g7. That's the plan. White played knight e6, makes sense. King c6, king d6. And here, there's a really genius idea with king e5. And actually, if king g7, king takes knight, king takes bishop, and a block. Okay, typical style mating idea. The brilliant thing is that after knight g7, that seems it's a completely winning move, there's this absolute genius maneuver, king d6, and you have to be careful with white. As you see, the engine is not even saying king g8, which is spoiling a bit of fun, but okay. King f8 and it's mating some moves because then they have to go back and they don't have this brilliant resource. But of course, any human here gets excited, plays king g8, and makes a draw because black sees king e7, and this is a draw already. This is drawn after king takes bishop and king f8. Really key detail. You play king f7, I think you're losing because then they will be able to block your move with knight d6, and then you're losing because you can't play king f7, you can't maintain the king smaller. So king f8 is really important, and this is the trick. You see, pawn and knight, and it's a draw. That's absolutely crazy. The thing you will see here is that after all of these checks, there's no way of maintaining the knight because there's no king move, there's no pawn moves. There's no way of maintaining the knight on g5 of any square covering f7 without giving a check because the king will always be on f7. So king f7, any move attacking the f7 square, king f8, and then you have to move. And as you will see now, there's no way of getting this king out, which is a really interesting game resource that, of course, it's completely losing. But you have to think of these resources. Even if you're down a pawn, you have to fight it because you have to be resilient. This is still a drawable endgame. It's still complicated, as you see, because he knew this type of ideas. He learned this pattern. It had not with a knight, but without pieces. He knew that he could try and trap it. And then he realized, wait, how is the knight gonna attack me? He just played it with 1 minute thought and managed to find all of this. And it's not complicated here. I actually think any player could draw this because the job is already done. King f8, king f7, and as I said, there's no way of maintaining the king out of f7 or f8. So it's absolutely drawn. And here, of course, the opponent tried, and then at some moment just allowed the threefold. Actually, I think he should have kept playing, but it's just a really easy draw. It's a really simple draw. The thing is that, as you will see now, there's no way of checking and not allowing the f7 square. And if you check, you allow me the f8 square. And you can't maintain covering the f7 square. If you had actually not even a pawn, well, actually any piece here, me yeah, any piece or any pawn would win here. I don't know. Like another h pawn. Funnily enough, if there was an h3 pawn here, even if you could think this is still a draw because the h pawn can't do a thing, it just loses a really important tempo. If h there was a pawn an h3, h4, you lose tempo, f7 is covered, and would be a draw. I will show you. Yeah, just gonna put a pawn here, I don't know, and white to move, and this is a draw. So this is not a draw anymore because h4 loses the tempo, and it's over. King e7, king g7. As I explained in the other moment, if white could just pass the move, it would be completely winning. So you have to be resilient. You have to still think for these tricks. Remind yourself that you still have some shenanigans, even if you're completely lost. Mm, And don't resign mentally. I hope you enjoyed this video, that you learned this pattern, and please subscribe. Thank you for saying it. Bye.